Before we begin the story, let us know where you're watching from by leaving a comment below. If you enjoy this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Have a wonderful day. Enjoy the story, everyone. The black Mercedes-Benz skidded violently on the wet I-95 asphalt. Spinning in circles like an out-of-control top, Elena Vargas felt her heart race when she saw the luxury car sliding directly toward her on the shoulder where she had stopped to change the flat tire of her navy blue Honda Civic. "No!" she screamed, jumping backward and falling on her back in the soaked grass. The Mercedes stopped just inches from her car, the engine smoking and the bumper dented. Elena lay there for a few seconds, breathing heavily, feeling Miami's rain hammering against her face. The driver's door opened, and a man stumbled out, obviously in shock. He was tall, had messy brown hair, and wore a suit that probably cost more than Elena's annual salary as a freelance graphic designer. "Are you okay?" he asked, running toward her. "Good heavens. You could have." Elena got up, brushing grass from her curly hair. When she looked into his worried blue eyes, something strange happened. Maybe it was the scare, or the adrenaline, or simply the relief of being alive. But she threw herself into his arms in a desperate hug. "Thank you for not running me over," she said, squeezing him tight. "I thought I was going to die." He tensed for a second, clearly surprised, but then returned the embrace. Elena caught his expensive cologne mixed with the smell of rain. And, was that right? He smelled like money. "I'm sorry," he murmured against her hair. "I lost control in the rain. And it's okay. It's all right," Elena said, finally pulling away and wiping tears she didn't even know were falling. "We're both alive. That's what matters." That's when she really looked at him. Defined jawline, eyes that seemed straight out of a perfume commercial, and an expression of genuine relief. He was, "Wow, I'm Alexander," he said, extending his hand. "Alexander Kensington." "Elena Vargas," she replied, shaking his hand. "And you, Alexander Kensington, just gave me the biggest scare of my life." He laughed, a rich, warm sound that did something strange to Elena's stomach. "Let me make it up to you. I can call a tow truck for your car and give you a ride wherever you need to go." Elena looked at her Honda with the flat tire and then at the dented Mercedes. "I think we both need a tow truck." "True." Alexander laughed again, running his hand through his wet hair. How about we grab some coffee while we wait? There's a Starbucks at the next exit." Elena hesitated. She didn't usually accept invitations from strangers, even if they were handsome strangers who almost ran her over. But something about him seemed safe, sincere. "Only because you almost turned me into a pancake," she said, smiling. 20 minutes later, they were sitting at a corner table in Starbucks, both still slightly wet, and laughing about the absurd situation. "So, what do you do when you're not almost running over innocent people?" Elena asked, stirring her latte. "I work in business," Alexander said vaguely. "And you?" "I'm a graphic designer, freelancer. Basically, I make pretty logos for people who pay in peanuts." Alexander smiled. "Are peanuts a valid form of payment?" "Unfortunately, my landlord disagrees." They talked for 2 hours. Alexander was funny, intelligent, and surprisingly modest for someone who drove a Mercedes. Elena discovered he liked old movies, hated sushi, and had a scar on his chin from falling off his bike when he was 8. "Can I see you again?" he asked when the tow truck finally arrived. Elena felt butterflies in her stomach. "Yes, I'd like that." They exchanged numbers, and Alexander insisted on paying for her tire repair. "It's the least I can do after almost killing you," he said with a crooked smile. On the way home, Elena couldn't stop smiling. Maybe the accident wasn't so bad after all. Maybe it was fate. If she had known what she would discover the next morning, she would have run in the opposite direction. Because Elena Vargas had just hugged and fallen for the man her parents had chosen to be her husband in an arranged marriage, the man she was supposed to hate, the man who represented everything she fought against. And when the truth finally came out, that loving embrace would be replaced by something very, very different. Elena woke up to 17 missed calls from her mother and a text that made her blood run cold. "Emergency family meeting now, mija." Still smiling from her coffee date with Alexander the night before, Elena threw on jeans and a sweater and drove to her parents' house in Coral Gables. The Vargas family mansion, while her father's successful restaurant chain afforded them certain luxuries, buzzed with activity. Relatives she hadn't seen in months filled the living room. "Elena, mija, sit down," her mother, Isabella, said in rapid Spanish, gesturing frantically toward the ornate sofa. "What's going on? Did someone die?" Elena asked, scanning the serious faces around her. Her father, Carlos, cleared his throat. "Elena, you know we've always wanted what's best for you." "Oh no, Elena muttered. "This is about marriage, isn't it? The Kensington family has been friends with our family for generations," her mother continued. Ignoring Elena's horrified expression, their son, Alexander, is a successful businessman, very handsome, very wealthy. "Wait, what?" Elena's heart stopped. "Alexander Kensington? Yes, you know him." Isabella's face lit up. "Perfect. This makes everything so much easier." Elena felt the room spinning. The coffee cup she'd been holding crashed to the marble floor. "You've got to be kidding me. The engagement party is this Saturday," her father announced proudly. "The wedding is planned for next month. The Kensingtons are very excited to welcome you into their family." "Next month?" Elena shot up from the couch. "You arranged a marriage without telling me. And to someone She stopped herself. She couldn't tell them about yesterday. "Not now. Mija, calm down," her mother said. "This is a good thing. The Kensingtons are one of the wealthiest families in Miami. Alexander owns half the real estate in South Beach. I don't care if he owns the entire city," Elena shouted. "You can't just sell me off like cattle." Her grandmother, Abuela Maria, spoke up from her wheelchair. "In my day, arranged marriages were perfectly normal. Look at your grandfather and me. 52 years of happiness. This isn't 1,950, Abuela." The doorbell rang, cutting through the family chaos. Isabella rushed to answer it, and Elena's stomach dropped when she heard familiar voices in the foyer. "The Kensingtons are here for lunch." Her mother called out cheerfully, "Elena, come meet your fiancé." Elena stood frozen as footsteps approached the living room. When Alexander walked in behind an elegant older couple, his face went through the same emotional journey hers did: confusion, recognition, and pure horror. "Elena," he said weakly. "Alexander," she whispered back. The room fell silent as everyone looked between them. "Oh, wonderful. You two know each other already." Mrs. Kensington, a woman who looked like she belonged in a country club magazine, clapped her hands together. "This is even better than we hoped." Alexander's father, a distinguished man with silver hair, stepped forward. "Alexander, meet your bride-to-be, Elena Vargas." Elena watched Alexander's face transform from confusion to understanding to anger. His jaw tightened, and something cold flickered in those blue eyes that had been so warm yesterday. "We need to talk," he said through gritted teeth. "Privately." Of course, Isabella beamed. "Use the garden. Get to know each other better." Elena followed Alexander outside, her heart pounding. The moment they were alone by the fountain, he turned on her. "You knew," he said accusingly. "Yesterday. You knew who I was." "What?" "No," Elena protested. "I had no idea. They just told me this morning." "Right," Alexander scoffed. "What a convenient coincidence. The flat tire, the accident, the whole damsel in distress act." "Act?" Elena's voice rose dangerously. "You think I staged a near-death experience to meet you? My family's been trying to set me up with you for months. Suddenly, you appear in my path, literally throwing yourself at me." "I did not throw yourself at you. You almost killed me." And then the crying, the vulnerable act, making me feel like some kind of hero. That's when Elena lost it. The slap echoed across the garden like a gunshot, leaving a perfect red handprint on Alexander's cheek. "How dare you?" she seethed. "You arrogant, pompous, self-absorbed piece of work. You think every woman on the planet is scheming to trap you?" Alexander held his cheek, his eyes wide with shock. Did you just slap me? I should have done worse. You think I want this marriage? You think I want to be tied to someone who believes every interaction is some calculated plot against his precious ego? Wait, you don't want this either?" Elena laughed bitterly. "Want it? I'd rather eat glass. I don't care if you're the richest man in Florida. You're also the most conceited jerk I've ever met." Alexander stared at her, the anger slowly draining from his face. "You really didn't know?" "Of course I didn't know. You think I go around hugging random men in parking lots as part of some elaborate marriage scheme?" They stood there for a moment, both breathing hard, both looking anywhere but at each other. "This is insane," Alexander finally said, running his hand through his hair. "They can't just arrange our lives like this." "Welcome to the Vargas family," Elena said dryly, "where your personal choices are optional suggestions. The Kensingtons aren't much better," Alexander admitted. "My father's been pushing this business alliance angle for months." Elena looked at him, really looked at him. The man who had held her so gently yesterday, who had laughed at her jokes and paid for her tire, was the same man she was supposed to marry, the same man who had just accused her of being a gold-digging schemer. "So, what do we do now?" she asked quietly. Alexander was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know. But I know I'm not marrying someone who slaps me on our first official meeting." "Good," Elena shot back. "Because I'm not marrying someone who thinks I'm a manipulative liar." They glared at each other across the garden, the fountain bubbling cheerfully between them, like it was mocking their situation. From inside the house, they could hear their families laughing and making wedding plans, completely oblivious to the disaster unfolding outside. Elena realized with sinking dread that yesterday's perfect accident had just become today's perfect nightmare, and somehow she had to figure out how to survive the next month without either killing Alexander Kensington or falling for him all over again. Absolutely not. "Come on, Elena. It's just 1 week." "I said no, Alexander. Find another fake fiancé." Elena slammed her laptop shut and glared at the man sitting across from her at the coffee shop. 3 days had passed since the garden confrontation, and Alexander had been texting her non-stop with increasingly desperate messages. "Look," Alexander said, leaning forward, "I know you hate me. Hate is a strong word. Despise works better, but we're both stuck in this mess. My grandmother is flying in from Boston tomorrow, and she's been planning this wedding since I was 12. If she finds out I'm trying to back out, she'll literally disinherit me." Elena stirred her iced coffee aggressively. "And I should care about your inheritance because your family will disown you, too. If you don't go through with this." Alexander said, quietly, "I saw how they looked at you when we came back inside. They think this marriage is your ticket to a better life." Elena's stirring slowed. He wasn't wrong. Her parents had been dropping hints about settling down and security for months. The restaurant business was struggling, and the Kensington connection could save them. "What exactly are you proposing?" she asked reluctantly. Alexander's eyes lit up. 1 week, we pretend to be the perfect engaged couple for my grandmother's visit. She goes back to Boston happy. Our families are satisfied. And then we can figure out how to break this off gradually. And what do I get out of this charade?" Alexander pulled out his phone and showed her a bank transfer screen. "1 million. Consider it payment for services rendered." Elena's eyes widened. "You want to pay me to pretend to love you?" "I want to pay you to help me survive my grandmother's visit without losing my trust fund." Alexander corrected. "Trust me, you'll earn every penny. Grandmother Kensington makes the Spanish Inquisition look like a tea party." Elena stared at the number on his phone. $50,000 would pay off her student loans, cover her rent for a year, and maybe even let her start her own design studio. 1 week, she said finally, 7 days of fake engagement. And then we're done. Deal. Alexander extended his hand. "Partners in crime." Elena shook it reluctantly. "Partners in surviving our insane families." The next evening, Elena stood in front of her closet. Having a full-scale panic attack, Alexander had texted her the dress code for dinner with his grandmother. Elegant, but not flashy. Conservative, but not boring. Expensive, but not obvious. "Thanks for the crystal-clear guidance," she muttered, pulling out her only designer dress, a black number she'd bought for her college graduation. Her phone buzzed. A text from Alexander. "Picking you up in 20. Try to look like you're madly in love with me. Try to look less like a pompous jerk." She texted back. When Alexander arrived, Elena had to admit he cleaned up well. The navy suit, crisp white shirt, and subtle cologne made him look like he'd stepped out of a magazine. Too bad his personality didn't match. "You look," he paused, taking in her appearance. "Nice. Wow. Such poetry. I'm swooning already. We need to work on our chemistry," Alexander said as he opened the car door for her. "My grandmother has radar for fake relationships." "Then maybe you should have hired a professional actress instead of blackmailing your reluctant fiancé." "I'm not blackmailing you. I'm paying you very well to pretend to tolerate me." The Kensington family estate in Key Biscayne was everything Elena expected. Massive, intimidating, and probably worth more than her entire neighborhood. Alexander's grandmother, Victoria Kensington, was a petite woman in her 70s with sharp eyes and an even sharper tongue. "So, you're the girl who's finally tamed my grandson," Victoria said, looking Elena up and down like she was inspecting a piece of art. "I wouldn't say tamed," Elena replied sweetly, "more like domesticated." Alexander coughed into his wineglass. Victoria's eyes twinkled with amusement. "I like her already," Victoria announced. "She's got spirit, much better than that vapid Brooke girl you brought home last Christmas." "Grandmother," Alexander warned. "What?" "She had the personality of a decorative pillow. This one has fire." Victoria turned to Elena. "Tell me, dear, What do you see in my grandson besides his trust fund? Elena felt Alexander tense beside her. This was it. The moment of truth. Well, Elena said, slipping her hand into Alexander's and squeezing it tightly. He's surprisingly funny when he's not trying to impress anyone. And he has this way of making me feel safe. Even in the most chaotic situations, she felt Alexander's hand squeeze back, and when she looked at him, something flickered in his eyes that wasn't entirely fake. And he makes excellent coffee, Elena added with a smile. Coffee? Victoria raised an eyebrow. We met at a Starbucks, Alexander said quickly. Very romantic Starbucks? Victoria repeated flatly. My grandson, heir to the Kensington fortune, proposed at a Starbucks. Actually, Elena said, thinking fast, he didn't propose there. That's just where we had our first real conversation. The proposal was much more unique. Victoria leaned forward. Do tell. Elena's mind raced. She could feel Alexander's panicked energy beside her. It was raining, she began, surprised by how easily the lie came. I was stranded with a flat tire, feeling completely helpless. And then Alexander appeared like some kind of knight in shining armor. He helped me, took care of everything, and in that moment, I knew that I wanted to spend the rest of my life with someone who would show up for me when everything fell apart. The room was quiet. Victoria's eyes were suspiciously bright, and even Alexander's parents looked moved. And the proposal? Victoria pressed. Elena looked at Alexander, who was staring at her with an unreadable expression. He told me he loved me in the middle of a rainstorm, she said softly. No ring, no fancy speech, just truth. Victoria dabbed at her eyes with her napkin. Well, that's the most romantic thing I've heard in decades. The rest of dinner passed in a blur of family stories and wedding planning. Elena found herself laughing at Alexander's childhood mishaps and sharing stories about her own family. By the time dessert arrived, she almost forgot they were pretending. You two are perfect together, Victoria declared as they prepared to leave. I can see why you fell for each other. In the car afterward, they sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes. That was, Alexander started, exhausting. Elena finished. Your grandmother is terrifying. She loves you. She loves the idea of me. There's a difference. Alexander pulled into Elena's driveway and turned to face her. Elena, what you said in there about wanting someone who shows up when everything falls apart, it was just acting. Alexander, don't read into it. But even as she said it, Elena wasn't entirely sure it was true. Because for a few hours tonight, pretending to be in love with Alexander Kensington hadn't felt like pretending at all, and that scared her more than any arranged marriage ever could. Elena's phone buzzed at 6:47 a.m. with a text that made her groan into her pillow. Emergency. Need you here as soon as possible. Grandmother wants to go wedding dress shopping. In R. This better be worth $50,000, she muttered, dragging herself to the shower. An hour later, she stood in the marble foyer of the Kensington estate, wearing jeans and a Miami Heat t-shirt, facing Victoria Kensington, who was dressed like she was attending a royal wedding. Dear, you can't possibly go dress shopping in that, Victoria said, eyeing Elena's casual outfit with barely concealed horror. I don't actually need a wedding dress, Elena said carefully. Since Alexander and I are taking things slow. Nonsense. A woman needs to see herself in white to truly envision her future. Victoria turned to Alexander, who had appeared in the doorway, looking like he'd also been dragged from bed. Alexander, take your fiancée upstairs and let her borrow something appropriate from your sister's closet. Grandmother, Olivia moved out 3 years ago. Her room is exactly as she left it. Go. Alexander led Elena up a grand staircase lined with family portraits. I'm sorry about this, he said quietly. She cornered me at breakfast with a list of bridal boutiques. It's fine, Elena lied. How hard can trying on a few dresses be? Alexander stopped at a door and gave her a look. You clearly don't know my grandmother. Olivia Kensington's room was like a museum exhibit titled Rich Girl Circa 2019. Designer clothes still hung in the walk-in closet, and Elena found herself staring at price tags that made her monthly rent seem like pocket change. This is insane, she muttered, pulling out a sundress that cost more than her car. Tell me about it, Alexander said from the doorway. Olivia always had expensive taste. Elena turned around, and something strange happened. Alexander was leaning against the doorframe, morning sunlight streaming through the windows behind him, his hair still messy from sleep. For a moment, he didn't look like the arrogant businessman who had accused her of scheming. He looked like just a guy. A very attractive guy, who was helping her navigate his complicated family. What? He asked, catching her staring. Nothing, Elena said quickly. turning back to the closet. Your sister has a lot of clothes. She's a marine biologist in Australia now. Drives my parents crazy. Smart girl, Elena said, pulling out a simple blue dress, getting as far away from all this as possible. Sometimes I think about it, Alexander admitted, just disappearing. Starting over somewhere nobody knows my last name. Elena looked at him in surprise. Really? But you have everything here? The business, the money, the status. I have everything my father wants me to have, Alexander corrected. There's a difference. Something in his voice made Elena pause. She'd been so focused on seeing him as the enemy that she'd never considered he might be just as trapped as she was. What would you do, she asked, if you could start over? Alexander was quiet for so long that Elena thought he wouldn't answer. Then he said, I used to want to be a teacher. Elementary school. I love kids, and I thought it would be nice to do something that actually mattered. Elena felt something shift in her chest. What stopped you? Reality. Kensington men don't become teachers. We become businessmen who donate to schools and feel good about ourselves. That's horrible. That's life. Alexander straightened up, and the vulnerable moment passed. You should probably get changed. Grandmother gets impatient. 2 hours later, Elena stood in the most expensive bridal boutique in Miami, wearing a wedding dress that cost more than most people's cars, while Victoria Kensington dabbed at her eyes with a lace handkerchief. You look absolutely radiant, dear, Victoria said. Alexander, come see your bride. Alexander, who had been banished to the waiting area with champagne and wedding magazines, reluctantly approached. When he saw Elena in the dress, he stopped walking. The dress was simple but elegant, ivory silk that hugged her curves before flowing into a modest train. The neckline was conservative but flattering, and the way the light caught the fabric made her skin glow. Well? Victoria demanded. What do you think of your fiancée? Alexander's throat moved as he swallowed. He cleared his throat. She's beautiful. The way he said it, looking directly into Elena's eyes, made her heart skip. For a moment, the pretense fell away, and she saw something raw and honest in his expression. This is the one, Victoria declared. We'll take it. Wait, Elena said, panic creeping into her voice. We can't just buy a wedding dress. This is all pretend, remember? But Victoria was already talking to the sales associate about alterations and delivery dates. Grandmother, Alexander said carefully, maybe we should discuss this with Elena's family first. Wedding planning is usually a joint effort. Excellent point, Victoria beamed. Let's call them right now and invite them to lunch. I want to meet the people who raised such a lovely girl. Elena caught Alexander's eye in the mirror. They were in trouble. 3 hours later, both families sat around an enormous table at the Fontainebleau Hotel, champagne flowing and wedding plans spiraling completely out of control. The ceremony should be at St. Mary's Cathedral, Victoria announced. I was married there, as was Alexander's mother. Actually, Isabella Vargas interjected, we were hoping for Sacred Heart. It's our family parish. The reception must be at the country club. Edward Kensington declared, we've held every family celebration there for 40 years, but the Plaza Coral Gables has such beautiful gardens. Carlos Vargas countered. Elena watched the verbal tennis match with growing horror. What had started as a fake engagement to appease Alexander's grandmother was turning into an actual wedding planning session. Maybe we should slow down, Elena said weakly. Alexander and I haven't even set a date yet. Spring is perfect for weddings, Victoria said. April 15th. I've already spoken to Father Ellis. April 15th. Elena squeaked. That's only 6 weeks away. When you know, Isabella said, reaching over to squeeze Elena's hand. Besides, Mija, you're not getting any younger. Thanks, Mom. Really feeling the support here. Under the table, Alexander's hand found hers and squeezed. When she looked at him, he was wearing the same overwhelmed expression she felt. Perhaps, Alexander said diplomatically, Elena and I should have some input on our own wedding. Of course, dear, Victoria said dismissively. You can choose your own flowers. Flowers? Elena repeated flatly. I'm thinking roses, Isabella said. Pink roses. So romantic. White roses are more classic, Victoria countered. What about what Elena wants? Alexander asked, and everyone at the table turned to look at her. Elena realized with a sinking feeling that she was supposed to have an opinion about flowers for a wedding that wasn't real to a man she was supposed to hate. The fact that she was actually considering pink peonies was deeply disturbing. I need some air, she said, standing abruptly. She made it to the hotel's oceanfront terrace before the panic attack hit. Her chest felt tight, her breathing was shallow, and she couldn't shake the image of herself in that wedding dress, looking at Alexander like he was actually her future. Hey, Alexander's voice was soft behind her. "You okay?" "This is insane," Elena said, gripping the railing. "They're planning an actual wedding with flowers and venues, and that dress costs more than my yearly salary." "I know. It's gotten way out of hand. Your grandmother already put a deposit down, didn't she?" Alexander's silence was answer enough. "Great. Just great." Elena turned to face him. "So now what? Do we actually go through with this farce?" "We could," Alexander said quietly. "Get married, keep everyone happy, then quietly divorce in a year or two. You'd get the settlement money. I'd keep my trust fund. Our families would be satisfied. Are you seriously suggesting we get married for real? People have married for worse reasons." Elena stared at him. "Like what?" "Like love?" Alexander said with a bitter smile. "At least we're going into this with realistic expectations. This is crazy. You're crazy. I must be crazy for even listening to this." Alexander stepped closer. "Elena, I know this isn't what either of us wanted, but maybe we could make it work. We get along when we're not trying to hate each other. We have chemistry. We do not have chemistry." "Really?" Alexander moved closer still, close enough that Elena could smell his cologne and see the flecks of gold in his blue eyes. "Because every time I touch you, every time we pretend to be in love, it doesn't feel like pretending." Elena's breath caught. He was right, and they both knew it. The spark between them was real, even if the circumstances were fake. "Alexander, I know you feel it too," he said softly. "The way you looked at me in that dress, that wasn't acting." He was so close now that Elena had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. Her heart was pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. "This is insane," she whispered. "Completely insane," he agreed, his hand coming up to cup her cheek. "We barely know each other. I know you hate sushi and love old movies. I know you scrunch your nose when you're thinking. I know you have a scar on your palm from falling off your bike when you were 7. How do you know that?" "I pay attention." They were so close now that Elena could feel his breath on her lips. The rational part of her brain was screaming warnings, but the rest of her was melting under his touch. "Elena," he whispered, and she knew he was going to kiss her. "There you are." Victoria's voice cut through the moment like a knife. "The photographer is here for engagement photos." Elena and Alexander sprang apart, both breathing hard. Victoria stood in the doorway, beaming at them. "How lovely. You two look absolutely glowing. Come along. The photographer wants to catch the golden hour light." As Victoria bustled them back inside, Elena caught Alexander's eye. What had almost happened between them hung in the air, unspoken, but impossible to ignore. Maybe Alexander was right. Maybe this arrangement could work. Or maybe they were both about to make the biggest mistake of their lives. Either way, Elena realized with a mix of terror and excitement she was about to find out, because as she stood there in her borrowed dress, surrounded by their eager families and a photographer snapping away, one thought kept running through her mind. She was no longer pretending to be Alexander's fiancée. Somewhere between the fake smiles and scripted romance, it had become real, and that terrified her more than any arranged marriage ever could. The engagement photo shoot was supposed to be simple. 1 hour, a few romantic poses, and they'd have the evidence their families needed to believe in their love story. What Elena hadn't counted on was how intimate it would feel to pretend to be in love with someone she was actually falling for. "Perfect. Now, Alexander, put your arms around Elena's waist," directed Mia Lee, the photographer Victoria had hired. "Elena, lean back into him. Trust him to catch you. Trust him." If only it were that simple. Elena felt Alexander's strong arms encircle her waist, his chest solid against her back. They were standing on the beach at sunset, the Miami skyline painting a perfect backdrop behind them. To anyone watching, they looked like the ideal couple, wealthy, beautiful, completely in love. "That's beautiful," Mia called out, her camera clicking rapidly. "The chemistry between you two is incredible. Most arranged couples I photograph look stiff, but you two, it's like you're actually in love." Elena felt Alexander's grip tighten slightly at the photographer's words. She wondered if he was thinking the same thing she was, that maybe they weren't acting anymore. "Let's try something more playful," Mia suggested. "Alexander, chase Elena along the water's edge. Elena, run, but let him catch you. Make it look spontaneous." Elena kicked off her heels and ran toward the waves, her flowing sundress billowing behind her. She could hear Alexander's footsteps in the sand gaining on her. When his arms wrapped around her waist and spun her around, her laughter was completely genuine. "Gotcha," he whispered in her ear, his breath warm against her neck. "That was cheating," she laughed, still breathless from running. "You have longer legs." "All's fair in love and engagement photos," Alexander said, but he didn't put her down. Instead, they stood there in the surf, his arms around her, both of them breathing hard and smiling. "Gorgeous," Mia called out. "Hold that pose. The way you're looking at each other is absolutely perfect." Elena realized she was staring into Alexander's eyes, completely lost in the moment. The setting sun cast golden light across his face, and she could see every fleck of color in his blue eyes. This close, she could see the faint scar on his chin from his childhood accident, could count his eyelashes, could feel the rapid beat of his heart against her chest. "Elena," he said softly, and she knew that look. It was the same one from the terrace before Victoria had interrupted them. "We should. The photographer is watching," Elena whispered, but she didn't move away. "I know," Alexander said, but his arms tightened around her. "I can't seem to care." "Okay, let's move to the rocks for some more dramatic shots," Mia called out, apparently oblivious to the tension. The next hour passed in a blur of poses and stolen glances. Elena found herself relaxing into Alexander's touch, laughing at his quiet jokes between shots, even enjoying the way he protectively guided her across the rocky terrain in her bare feet. "Last shot," Mia announced as the sun dipped lower. "I want something intimate. Alexander, sit on that driftwood log. Elena, sit between his legs. Lean back against his chest. This is your private moment. No one else exists." Elena settled between Alexander's legs, feeling surrounded by his warmth. His arms came around her naturally, and she let herself relax against him. The beach was quiet except for the sound of waves and the occasional click of the camera. "Tell me something true," Alexander said quietly, his lips close to her ear. "What do you mean?" "Something real. Not part of our act." Elena was quiet for a moment, watching the waves roll in. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Of what?" "Of how easy this is, how right it feels." She paused. "Of how much I'm going to miss this when it's over." Alexander's arms tightened around her. "What if it doesn't have to be over?" Before Elena could respond, Mia called out, "That's a wrap. You two are absolutely magical together. I can't wait to show you the previews." As they gathered their things and said goodbye to the photographer, Elena felt a strange sense of loss. For the past hour, they'd existed in a bubble where their fake relationship felt completely real. Now, walking back to Alexander's car, reality was creeping back in. "Want to grab dinner?" Alexander asked as they reached his Mercedes. "We should probably discuss things." Elena nodded, not trusting herself to speak. They drove in comfortable silence to a small Italian restaurant in Coconut Grove, far from the places where they might run into their families. "So," Alexander said once they'd ordered wine and pasta, "that was intense." "Eye-opening," Elena finished. "I was going to say eye-opening, but intense works, too." Elena fidgeted with her napkin. "Alexander, what are we doing here?" "I mean, really doing?" "I don't know," he said. "Honestly, 6 days ago, I thought you were a scheming gold digger. 3 days ago, I hired you to fake an engagement. And now I'm sitting here trying to figure out how to convince you to marry me for real." Elena's wine glass stopped halfway to her lips. "What?" "I know how it sounds. I know this whole situation is insane. But Elena, what happened today? That wasn't acting. At least not for me. Alexander, hear me out. We're compatible. We make each other laugh. We have incredible chemistry. Don't even try to deny it. And we're both trapped in this family situation, whether we like it or not." Elena set down her wine glass carefully. "So, your solution is to actually get married to someone you met a week ago." "People get married for worse reasons every day," Alexander said, echoing his earlier words. "At least we're honest about what this is." "And what is this exactly?" Alexander reached across the table and took her hand. "It's a chance to make something real out of something fake, a chance to save our family's business alliance while maybe, possibly finding something good for ourselves." Elena stared down at their joined hands. "You're talking about a marriage of convenience. I'm talking about a marriage with potential." "Elena, I've dated plenty of women who wanted me for my money or my name. You're the first person who's seen all of that and still managed to genuinely like the man underneath. How do you know I genuinely like you?" "Maybe I'm just a really good actress." Alexander smiled. "Because you slapped me when you thought I was a jerk. Someone faking it would have just smiled and taken it." Despite everything, Elena found herself smiling back. "You did deserve that slap. Completely deserved it. And that's when I knew you were different." Their food arrived, but neither of them seemed very interested in eating. Elena's mind was racing, trying to process what Alexander was suggesting. What would this marriage actually look like? She asked finally. I mean, if we're being practical about it, we'd live together. Obviously, get to know each other properly. See if what we felt today was real, or just adrenaline and good lighting. And if it's not real, then we have a friendly divorce in a year or two. You get a substantial settlement. And we both move on with our lives. No harm done. Elena laughed, but there was no humor in it. No harm done? Alexander, you're talking about playing Russian roulette with our hearts. Maybe. Or maybe I'm talking about the smartest decision either of us could make. Alexander leaned forward, his expression serious. Elena, I've spent my whole life doing what other people expected of me, following the path my father laid out, dating the women my mother approved of, making decisions based on what would make everyone else happy, and you know what? I've never been more miserable. So, you think marrying me will fix that? I think marrying you might be the first real choice I've ever made. And that terrifies me and excites me in equal measure. Elena was quiet for a long moment, twirling pasta around her fork without eating it. Can I ask you something? Anything? That day we met in the rain. If there had been no arranged marriage, no family pressure, no complications, would you have called me? Alexander didn't hesitate. Yes, absolutely. Yes. I went home that night and stared at your number for 2 hours, trying to figure out the perfect text message to send you. What stopped you? My mother called and started talking about the Vargas girl they wanted me to meet. He shook his head. I thought it was a sign that I should focus on family obligations instead of chasing after a woman I'd met in a parking lot. And now? Now I think maybe that accident was the sign. Maybe we were supposed to meet exactly the way we did. Elena felt tears prick her eyes. Alexander, I need you to understand something. I've never been the kind of girl who dreams about fairy tale weddings or believes in love at first sight. I'm practical. I make sensible decisions. I don't fall for charming billionaires with trust fund problems. And yet here I am, seriously considering marrying someone I've known for less than a week. She laughed shakily. My therapist is going to have a field day with this. Is that a yes? Elena looked at him across the table. Really looked at him. She saw the hope in his eyes, the vulnerability he was trying to hide, the way he was holding his breath, waiting for her answer. It's not a no, she said finally. Alexander's smile could have powered the entire restaurant. I'll take it, but I have conditions. Name them. First, we take this slow, real marriage or not. I barely know you. We need time to figure out if this attraction is real or just proximity and good looks. Agreed. What else? Second, complete honesty. No more games. No more pretending. If we're going to do this, we do it with our eyes wide open. Done. Anything else? Elena hesitated. If it doesn't work out, if we realize we've made a mistake, we end it as friends. No drama, no bitterness, no making each other's lives miserable. Elena, Alexander said seriously, even if this whole thing crashes and burns spectacularly, I could never regret meeting you. You've already changed my life in ways you don't even know. How? You made me remember who I used to be before I became the person everyone expected me to be. And you made me want to be better than I am. Elena felt her resolve crumbling. She was falling for him, had already fallen for him, if she was being honest. And maybe, just maybe, that wasn't the worst thing that could happen. Okay, she said quietly. Okay, let's do this crazy thing. Let's get married and see what happens. Alexander was around the table and pulling her into his arms before she could take another breath. This time when he kissed her, there was no grandmother to interrupt, no photographer to capture it, no audience to perform for. It was just them. And it was perfect. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Alexander rested his forehead against hers. So, he said, his voice rough with emotion, I guess we should probably set a real wedding date. Elena laughed, giddy with the magnitude of what they'd just decided. April 15th. April 15th. Alexander agreed. Our families will be thrilled, terrified. More like, they have no idea what they've unleashed. The best love stories usually start with a little chaos, Alexander said, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. Is that what this is? A love story? I don't know yet, Alexander said honestly, but I'm excited to find out. As they left the restaurant hand in hand, Elena caught their reflection in the window. They looked like exactly what they were supposed to be. A couple in love, walking into their future together. The only difference was that now, maybe it wasn't entirely pretend, Elena's phone buzzed with a text from Mia, the photographer. Preview photos attached. You two are going to make the most beautiful bride and groom. The love between you is absolutely radiant." Elena opened the attachment and gasped. The photos were stunning, but what took her breath away was the way she and Alexander looked at each other. The camera had captured something neither of them had realized was happening. They looked like two people falling in love. "What is it?" Alexander asked. Seeing her expression, Elena turned the phone toward him. "I think," she said softly, "we might have been fooling ourselves more than our families." Alexander studied the photos, his expression growing serious. "Elena, in every single one of these pictures, you can see exactly when I stopped pretending." "When was that?" "The moment you ran into the surf and started laughing. That's when I knew I was in trouble." Elena scrolled through more photos, seeing the progression of their day. By the last few shots, they weren't posing anymore. They were just existing together naturally, like they belonged. "So, what happens now?" she asked. "Now?" Alexander said, stopping to face her under a streetlight. "We stop pretending this is fake and start admitting it's real. All of it. All of it. The engagement, the feelings, the future we're planning together." Elena nodded. "Decision made." "Okay, but Alexander, yeah, if we're doing this for real, then I want a real proposal. Not because our families arranged it, not because it's convenient, but because you actually want to marry me." Alexander's smile was soft and genuine. "Elena Vargas, would you do me the honor of being my wife? Not because our families want us to, not because it solves our problems, but because I can't imagine my life without you in it." Elena felt tears start to fall, but they were happy tears this time. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I'll marry you." When Alexander kissed her this time, Elena knew with absolute certainty that whatever happened next, she was exactly where she was supposed to be, even if it had taken a car accident, a slap, and a fake engagement to get there. 6 weeks later, Elena stood in the bridal suite at the Fontainebleau Hotel, staring at herself in the full-length mirror, while her mother, sister, and best friend, Sophia, fussed around her like hummingbirds around a flower. The ivory silk dress fit her perfectly, the alterations having been completed just days before. Her grandmother's pearl necklace caught the light as she turned, and the delicate lace veil cascaded down her back like a waterfall. "I still can't believe you're actually going through with this," Sophia said, adjusting Elena's veil for the 15th time. 6 weeks ago, you were complaining about your parents trying to set you up, and now you're marrying the guy. The same guy, Elena, the one from the arranged marriage. "Love works in mysterious ways, Mija," Isabella said, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue while trying not to smudge her carefully applied makeup. "When you know, you know. Look at your father and me. We knew after 2 weeks. You dated for 3 years before getting engaged." Mom, Elena's sister, Gabriella, pointed out while pinning a loose curl back into place. "Details," Isabella waved dismissively. "The point is, the heart knows what it wants." Elena caught Sophia's eye in the mirror. Her best friend had been skeptical from the beginning, especially when Elena had tried to explain the whirlwind romance without mentioning the whole arranged marriage, fake engagement, car accident, origin story. Some things were just too complicated to explain, even to your best friend. "Are you sure about this?" Sophia whispered when Isabella and Gabriella stepped out to check on the flowers and coordinate with the wedding planner. "Really? Truly? Sure? Because it's not too late to run. I have my car keys. We could be in the Florida Keys by sunset." Elena turned away from the mirror to face her friend, taking her hands. "Sophia, I know it sounds crazy. I know 6 weeks isn't very long to know someone. I know this goes against everything I've ever said about taking relationships slow and being practical about love. But," she paused, trying to find the right words to explain what she felt without revealing the complicated truth. "Have you ever felt like your whole life was leading up to one moment? Like everything that happened before, all the bad dates, all the heartbreak, all the times I swore I'd never get married, was just preparation for something bigger. That's very romantic and all. But Elena, you've known this man for 6 weeks. 6 weeks. I love him," Elena said simply, the words coming easier each time she said them. "I know it's fast. I know it's impractical. I know it goes against everything I always said about taking relationships slow and being sensible. But I love Alexander Kensington, and he loves me, and sometimes that's enough. Sometimes that's everything." Sophia studied her friend's face for a long moment, seeing something there she'd never seen before. A quiet certainty. A glow that went beyond wedding day makeup. "Okay," she said finally. "If you're happy, I'm happy. But if he breaks your heart, I'm breaking his kneecaps." And I know people who know people. Deal. Elena laughed, hugging her friend tightly. But you won't need to call in any favors. Alexander's not going anywhere. How can you be so sure? Elena thought about the past 6 weeks. The long conversations that lasted until dawn, the way Alexander brought her coffee exactly how she liked it without being asked, how he'd held her hair back when she got food poisoning from questionable sushi, the way he looked at her like she was the most interesting person in any room. Because he chooses me, Elena said softly. Every day, in 100 little ways, he chooses me, and I choose him. Elena's sister, Gabriella, burst through the door, breathless with excitement, and looking stunning in her dusty rose bridesmaid dress. Elena, you have to see this. The wedding planner just showed me the ceremony setup, and it's absolutely magical. There are flower petals scattered down the aisle, and the arch is covered in white roses and jasmine, and the ocean looks like diamonds sparkling in the sun. Through the suite's floor-to-ceiling windows, Elena could see the beach where their ceremony would take place in less than an hour. White Chiavari chairs were arranged in perfect rows facing an elaborate arch covered in white roses, eucalyptus, and trailing jasmine. The Atlantic Ocean sparkled in the late afternoon sun, and palm trees swayed gently in the warm breeze. White fabric draped between tall poles created an intimate chapel feeling on the open beach. It was perfect, almost too perfect for what had started as a fake engagement born out of family manipulation and mutual desperation. 5 minutes, the wedding coordinator called through the door, her voice bright with practiced efficiency. Bride needs to be ready for family photos before the ceremony. Elena's stomach fluttered with nerves. In the 6 weeks since their engagement had become real, she and Alexander had spent every possible moment together. They'd had dinner with each other's families at least twice a week, taken weekend trips to Key West and Orlando, spent lazy Sunday mornings reading the paper in bed together while Alexander made his terrible coffee, and Elena attempted to teach him proper brewing techniques. She'd learned that Alexander made terrible coffee but excellent pancakes, that he sang off-key in the shower but had perfect pitch when he thought no one was listening, that he got genuinely excited about nature documentaries and could discuss marine biology for hours. He discovered that Elena talked to her plants by name, had an irrational fear of butterflies stemming from a childhood incident with a butterfly garden, and could do a perfect impression of his grandmother that made him laugh until his sides hurt. They'd also had their first real fight 3 weeks ago when Alexander had tried to surprise her by paying off her student loans without asking. Elena had been furious about the assumption that she needed rescuing, and Alexander had been hurt that she didn't appreciate the gesture. They'd spent 2 days not speaking before finally having a long, honest conversation about boundaries, independence, and the difference between helping and controlling. "We're going to screw this up sometimes," Alexander had said, holding her hands across the kitchen table in his penthouse apartment, while the Miami skyline twinkled behind them. "I'm going to do rich guy things that annoy you because I've never had to think about money the way normal people do. And you're going to be stubborn about accepting help when you need it, because you've had to be independent for so long. But we'll figure it out together, okay? We'll learn each other's languages." That conversation had somehow made Elena more certain about marrying him, not less, because it proved they could fight and make up, that they could navigate disagreements without destroying what they'd built, that they could be honest about their flaws and still choose each other. "Showtime." "Beautiful," Isabella said, handing Elena her bouquet of white peonies, eucalyptus, and baby's breath. The flowers were simple but elegant, tied with ivory silk ribbon that matched her dress. "Your father is waiting to walk you down the aisle, and he's already crying." "He's been crying since breakfast," Gabriella added with a fond smile. "He keeps saying his little girl is all grown up." Elena took a deep breath, trying to calm her racing heart. She followed her family out of the bridal suite, her heels clicking on the marble floors of the hotel. In the hallway, she nearly collided with Alexander, who was coming around the corner with his groomsmen, his brother William, his college roommate Ethan, and Elena's cousin Javier, whom Alexander had insisted on including to symbolize the joining of their families. "Whoa!" Alexander caught her elbow to steady her, then immediately dropped his hand and took a step back like she was made of fire. "Sorry, I wasn't supposed to see you yet. Grandmother will have my head if she finds out I broke tradition." They stared at each other for a moment. Alexander looked impossibly handsome in his navy suit, perfectly tailored to his tall frame. His hair was styled, but still had that slightly messy quality that made Elena want to run her fingers through it. His blue eyes were bright with happiness and nerves, and there was a small nick on his jaw where he'd obviously cut himself shaving. "Hi," Elena said softly, drinking in the sight of him. "Hi yourself," Alexander replied, his voice rough with emotion. You look. He shook his head, apparently speechless. I'm not supposed to see you. But wow, Elena. You're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Alexander Kensington, get away from that bride this instant. Victoria's voice cut through the moment like a knife. It's bad luck to see the bride before the ceremony. Sorry, grandmother, Alexander called back. But he didn't move. Instead, he stepped closer to Elena, lowering his voice so only she could hear him. Any second thoughts? He asked quietly, his eyes searching her face. Only about 50, Elena admitted honestly. You? At least 100. But they're all about logistics and timing and whether I remember to tip the caterers and if the flowers are going to hold up in this humidity. None of them are about you. Not a single doubt about you. Elena felt her heart skip. None. Not one. Elena Vargas, I cannot wait to marry you. I can't wait to call you my wife. I can't wait to start our life together. Even though I'm stubborn and independent and I made you sleep on the couch last week when you tried to reorganize my closet without asking. Especially because of all that, Alexander said, grinning. Although, for the record, your closet organization system makes no logical sense. It makes perfect sense. Organized by color within seasonal categories with frequently worn items at eye level. You have summer dresses mixed in with winter sweaters. Alexander James Kensington. Victoria's voice was getting closer and more demanding. I should go before your grandmother actually disowns me, Alexander said reluctantly. See you at the altar. I'll be the one in white, trying not to cry, Elena said. Alexander started to walk away, then turned back. Elena. Yeah? I love you more than I knew it was possible to love someone. I love you, too. Now go before Victoria sends a search party. Victoria appeared around the corner just as Alexander disappeared down the opposite hallway with his groomsmen. Elena, dear, you look absolutely radiant. Are you ready to become a Kensington? Elena looked down at her wedding dress, felt the weight of her grandmother's pearl necklace around her neck, thought about the man waiting for her at the end of the aisle, and realized that despite all the chaos and confusion that had brought them here, she'd never been more ready for anything in her life. I'm ready, she said, and meant it completely. The ceremony was a blur of emotions and perfect moments that Elena knew she'd treasure forever. The string quartet played Pachelbel's canon as the wedding party made their way down the petal-scattered aisle. Gabriella walked first, radiant in her dusty rose dress, followed by Alexander's sister, Olivia, who had flown in from Australia specifically for the wedding. Victoria wiped tears from her eyes as Alexander's nephew served as ring-bearer, carrying the rings on a small pillow with serious 6-year-old concentration. When the music changed to the traditional wedding march, Elena appeared on her father's arm, and the entire gathering rose to their feet. Alexander's face when he saw her approaching was something she knew she'd remember for the rest of her life. Pure joy mixed with awe. Like he couldn't quite believe she was real. And walking toward him, Elena's father walked her down the sandy aisle slowly, tears streaming down his weathered face as he whispered how proud he was of her. How beautiful she looked, how happy Alexander made her. He's a good man, mija, Carlos said quietly as they neared the altar. He loves you, the way you deserve to be loved. When they reached Alexander, Carlos placed Elena's hand in his with a solemn nod. Take care of my little girl, he said, his voice thick with emotion. With my life, Alexander promised, and Elena could see he meant every word. Father Ellis, the priest Victoria had insisted on despite Elena's family's preference for their own parish, kept the ceremony traditional but warm. He spoke about love being a choice made new each day, about the importance of partnership and mutual respect, about the blessing of finding someone who sees you completely and loves you anyway. When it came time for vows, Elena and Alexander had decided to write their own. Despite Victoria's protests that traditional vows were more appropriate and less likely to cause emotional scenes, Alexander went first, pulling a folded piece of paper from his jacket pocket with slightly trembling hands. Elena could see that he'd written and rewritten the words multiple times, the paper worn soft from handling. Elena, he began, his voice carrying clearly across the beach. 6 weeks ago, I thought I knew exactly what my life was going to look like. I had a plan, a timeline, a very sensible and practical approach to everything. I was going to marry someone appropriate, have 5 children at the appropriate time, and live the life my family expected me to live. He paused, looking directly into her eyes. And then you literally crashed into my world and changed everything. You've taught me that the best things in life aren't planned. They're discovered. You've shown me that being vulnerable isn't weakness, it's courage. And you've proved that sometimes the most impractical decisions turn out to be the smartest ones you'll ever make. Soft laughter rippled through their guests, and Elena felt tears starting to fall, not caring that her carefully applied makeup was probably running. Elena, you've seen me at my worst, arrogant, presumptuous, accused you of being a gold digger on our second meeting, and somehow you still chose to love me. You've taught me that real love isn't about finding someone perfect, it's about finding someone perfect for you. Alexander's voice grew stronger, more confident. I promise to never try to change you. Even when you organize the spice cabinet in ways that defy all logic and reason, I promise to support your dreams, even if they involve butterfly photography, workshops that terrify me to my core. I promise to let you be independent while still being there to catch you when you fall. The paper fluttered in the ocean breeze, and Alexander folded it, his eyes never leaving Elena's face. But most importantly, I promise to love you exactly as you are, while growing alongside you into whoever we're meant to become together. You saved me from a life I didn't even realize I didn't want. Thank you for being brave enough to take this leap with me. Elena was full-on crying now, not caring who saw or what the photographer captured. When Father Ellis nodded to her with a gentle smile, she took a shaky breath and began her own vows, her voice wavering with emotion. Alexander, I used to think that love at first sight was something that only happened in movies and romance novels. I was wrong. She paused to wipe her eyes with the handkerchief Gabriella pressed into her hand. I fell in love with you in a Starbucks parking lot in the rain, and I've been falling deeper every single day since. She looked out at their families, her parents beaming with pride, Victoria dabbing her eyes with a lace handkerchief, Alexander's parents looking genuinely moved, then back at Alexander. You've shown me that it's okay to let someone take care of you sometimes, as long as they respect your independence and your strength. You've taught me that compromise doesn't mean losing yourself. It means finding yourself in partnership with someone else who brings out the best in you. Elena's voice grew stronger as she continued, finding her rhythm. I promise to call you out when you're being too much of a rich boy who doesn't understand how the real world works. And I promise to let you spoil me occasionally when I need it, even when it goes against every independent instinct I have. More laughter from their guests, and Alexander's face lit up with surprise and joy at her honesty. I promise to support your dreams, even if they involve teaching elementary school kids who will probably give us head lice and finger paint stains on everything we own. I promise to love your family as my own, even when your grandmother rearranges my kitchen when she visits. Victoria actually laughed out loud at that, nodding approvingly. And I promise to love you through whatever comes next. The easy parts and the hard parts, the planned parts and the parts that crash into us when we least expect them, just like you crashed into my life. You've already given me the greatest adventure of my life, Alexander Kensington. And we're just getting started. Father Ellis smiled broadly, clearly moved by their words. I think it's safe to say these two are ready to be married. Alexander, do you take Elena to be your wife, to love and cherish in sickness and in health? For richer or poorer, for better or worse, for as long as you both shall live? I do. Absolutely, completely, forever and always, I do. Elena, do you take Alexander to be your husband, to love and cherish in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, for better or worse, for as long as you both shall live? Elena looked into Alexander's eyes, remembering their first meeting in the rain, their first fight in his grandmother's garden, their first real kiss on the terrace, all the moments that had led them here to this perfect moment. I do. With all my heart, I do. May I have the rings? Alexander's nephew stepped forward proudly, and both Alexander and Elena took their wedding bands from the small pillow. Alexander, place this ring on Elena's finger and repeat after me. With this ring, I thee wed. Alexander slipped the platinum band onto Elena's finger, his hand steady despite his obvious emotion. With this ring, I thee wed, and with my heart, I promise to love you forever. Elena, place this ring on Alexander's finger and repeat after me. With this ring, I thee wed. Elena slipped the matching band onto Alexander's finger, marveling at how right it looked there. With this ring, I thee wed, and with my whole heart, I choose you for always. By the power vested in me by the state of Florida and the blessing of the Almighty, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Alexander, you may kiss your bride. Alexander didn't wait for the invitation to be repeated. He cupped Elena's face in his hands and kissed her like it was the first time and the last time and every perfect moment in between. Their guests erupted in cheers and applause, rice and rose petals flying through the air, but Elena barely heard them. All she could focus on was the man she'd just married, and the way he was looking at her like she'd hung the moon and all the stars. "Hello, Mrs. Kensington," Alexander murmured against her lips. "Hello, Mr. Kensington." Elena murmured back, "How does it feel to be married to a woman who slapped you the second time you met?" "Like the luckiest man alive," Alexander said, spinning her around as rose petals fell around them like confetti. The reception was everything Victoria and Isabella had envisioned, and more. Elegant, romantic, and perfectly orchestrated down to the last detail, the ballroom was transformed with thousands of white flowers, crystal chandeliers, and soft candlelight that made everything glow. Elena and Alexander's first dance was to "At Last" by Etta James, and Elena couldn't help but laugh at how perfectly the lyrics fit their unconventional love story. "What's so funny?" Alexander asked as they swayed together, completely lost in each other despite the room full of people watching them. "Just thinking about how we got here," Elena said, her arms wrapped around his neck. "If someone had told me 6 weeks ago that I'd be dancing at my own wedding to a man I met in a car accident, I'd have recommended therapy, and if someone had told me that the woman I almost ran over would become the love of my life, I'd have thought they were certifiably insane." "We are crazy," Elena pointed out, smiling up at him. "The best kind of crazy, the kind that makes life worth living." As the song ended and other couples joined them on the dance floor, Elena found herself watching their families mingling and laughing together. Carlos and Edward were deep in conversation about expanding the restaurant business into some of the Kensington properties, while Isabella and Mrs. Kensington compared notes on wedding planning and were already discussing potential grandchildren. Victoria was holding court at a corner table, regaling anyone who would listen with stories about Alexander's childhood and how she'd always known he'd find someone special. "She's telling the story about when I tried to marry the neighbor's cat when I was 5, isn't she?" Alexander said, following Elena's gaze to his grandmother. "I think she's moved on to the time you proposed to your kindergarten teacher," Elena laughed. "In my defense, Mrs. Thompson was very nice and gave me extra cookies. Should I be jealous of Mrs. Thompson? Only if you're planning to withhold cookies," Alexander said, spinning Elena around the dance floor. The evening continued with heartfelt toasts from family and friends. Alexander's best man, his brother William, told embarrassing stories about Alexander's previous dating disasters and his declarations that he'd never get married young like his parents had. "And here we are," William concluded his speech, raising his champagne glass, celebrating Alexander's marriage to a woman he's known for 6 weeks. "Just goes to show, when you know, you know. And clearly my brother knows. Welcome to the family, Elena. You're stuck with us now." Gabriella's maid of honor speech was equally touching and embarrassing, sharing tales of Elena's string of failed relationships and her repeated declarations that she'd never get married, that she was too independent, too focused on her career, too practical for love. "And here we are," Gabriella concluded, echoing William's words, celebrating Elena's marriage to a man she met in what she described to me as the most traumatic parking lot experience of my life. "Just goes to show, love finds a way, even when it has to nearly run you over to get your attention." The cake cutting was a production worthy of a Hollywood movie, with a 3-tiered confection covered in sugar flowers that looked almost real. Alexander, true to form, managed to smear frosting on Elena's nose, earning him a playful threat of another slap and delighted laughter from their guests. "You're never going to let me live down that slap, are you?" Alexander asked as he carefully cleaned frosting off Elena's face with his napkin. "Never," Elena said cheerfully. "It's going into my wedding speech at every anniversary party we ever have. Remind me to make our anniversary celebrations very private affairs." As the evening progressed, Elena found herself stealing quiet moments with Alexander, between the chaos of greeting guests, cutting cake, and dancing with various family members. Each stolen kiss, each whispered joke, each shared glance across the crowded ballroom reinforced her certainty that they'd made the right choice. "No regrets?" Sophia asked when she found Elena touching up her lipstick in the luxurious ladies' room. "None," Elena said firmly, meeting her friend's eyes in the mirror. "What about you? Still think I'm making a mistake?" "I think you're making the most beautiful mistake I've ever seen," Sophia said, hugging her friend carefully to avoid wrinkling the dress. "And for what it's worth, I think Alexander knows exactly how lucky he is. The way he looks at you, Elena, I've never seen anyone look at another person like that." "Like what?" "Like you're the answer to every question he never knew he was asking." When Elena returned to the reception, she found Alexander in animated conversation with her cousin Raphael, about sustainable farming practices and their potential applications in urban settings. Watching him genuinely engage with her family, remembering details about their lives, and asking thoughtful questions made her heart swell with love and pride. He wasn't just tolerating her family for her sake. He was genuinely interested in them, genuinely building relationships. Ladies and gentlemen, the DJ announced. The bride and groom would like to say a few words before we continue the celebration. Alexander took Elena's hand and led her to the small stage where the band had been playing. Looking out at all their family and friends, Elena felt overwhelmed by how much her life had changed in such a short time, and how right it all felt. First, Alexander began, his arm around Elena's waist. Elena and I want to thank all of you for being here today. We know our timeline was a little accelerated, and we appreciate you rolling with our somewhat spontaneous approach to wedding planning. Some of you might be wondering how two people can decide to get married after knowing each other for only 6 weeks, Elena continued, smiling as she saw several family members nodding in acknowledgement. Honestly, we wondered the same thing. We questioned ourselves. We questioned each other. We questioned our sanity multiple times, Alexander added, getting a laugh from the crowd. But sometimes life doesn't give you a neat timeline or a practical plan, Elena said. Sometimes it gives you a moment, or in our case, a car accident, and you have to decide whether to play it safe or take a leap of faith. We chose the leap, Alexander said, squeezing Elena's hand, and we're so glad we did. But, Elena added with a grin, we also want you to know that we're not completely crazy. We've arranged for a very long engagement. Oh, wait, we skipped that part. Their guests erupted in laughter. What Elena means, Alexander said, is that we're planning a very long marriage. Like forever long. So, you'll have plenty of time to get used to us as a couple and plenty of time to tell us I told you so if this doesn't work out. But it's going to work out, Elena said, turning to look at her new husband, because we're not just marrying each other. We're choosing each other every day for the rest of our lives. The crowd awed appropriately, and Elena felt her heart skip again. Even after 6 weeks of getting to know him, Alexander still had the ability to surprise her with his romantic side and his certainty about their future. So, please, Elena concluded, eat, drink, dance, and help us celebrate the fact that sometimes the most unplanned things turn out to be exactly what you needed all along. As their guests raised their glasses in a toast, Elena caught sight of the wedding photographer capturing the moment. She thought about their engagement photos, how the camera had revealed truths they hadn't been ready to admit yet. Tonight, she knew the photos would tell a different story, not two people pretending to be in love, but two people who had found their perfect match in the most imperfect circumstances. The rest of the evening passed in a whirlwind of dancing, laughter, and joy. Elena danced with her father to Butterfly Kisses, both of them crying through the entire song. Alexander danced with his mother and grandmother, and even convinced Victoria to dance to a slightly more upbeat song that had her laughing like a young woman. As the evening wound down and guests began to leave with heartfelt congratulations and promises to visit soon, Elena found herself alone on the hotel's oceanfront terrace with Alexander, both of them barefoot and slightly disheveled from hours of dancing. So, Alexander said, sitting on a wrought iron bench and pulling Elena down beside him, the ocean waves providing a gentle soundtrack. How does it feel to be Mrs. Kensington? Terrifying and perfect, Elena said honestly, leaning against his shoulder. How does it feel to be married to someone who still doesn't know your middle name? It's James, Alexander James Kensington, named after my great-grandfather, who apparently was quite the character, and it feels like the adventure I never knew I wanted, but now can't imagine living without. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the waves and watching the last of their guests say goodbye in the distance. Elena thought about how different this moment was from their first meeting. No rain, no panic, no accusations, just peace and possibility, and the quiet certainty that they were exactly where they belonged. Elena, I know we did this backwards. Marriage first, really getting to know each other second, but I want you to know that every day I discover something new about you. I fall a little bit more in love. Elena turned to face him, seeing her new husband silhouetted against the moonlight, reflecting off the ocean. Even when you discover annoying things, like how I leave coffee cups everywhere, or how I sing Broadway songs in the shower at full volume. Especially then, Alexander said, leaning in to kiss her softly. Those are the parts that make you real, that make this real, that make me realize how empty my life was before you crashed into it. Good, Elena said against his lips, because you're stuck with me now, legally and everything. Best contract I ever signed. Alexander murmured. As they walked hand in hand back toward the hotel, Elena's phone buzzed with a text from the wedding photographer. Preview shots attached. You two are absolutely magical together. These photos capture such genuine joy and love. I can't wait to show you the full gallery. Elena opened the attachment and gasped. The photos were stunning, but what took her breath away was how different they looked from their engagement pictures. Where those had captured two people falling in love, these showed two people who had already fallen and landed safely in each other's arms. Look, she said, showing Alexander the phone. Alexander studied the photos, his expression growing soft. In the ceremony shots, you could see the exact moment when they both realized this was really happening, that they were really choosing each other forever. The reception photos showed pure joy, two people celebrating not just their wedding, but their future. You know what I see? Alexander asked. What? I see two people who stopped pretending and started believing. Two people who took the biggest risk of their lives and won everything they never knew they wanted. Elena looked at the photos again, at their faces during the ceremony, their first dance, the quiet moments between the chaos of the reception. Alexander was right. Somewhere between the fake engagement and the real wedding, they'd stopped acting and started being themselves completely. So, what happens now? Elena asked as they reached the elevator. Now, Alexander said, pulling her close as the doors closed behind them, we live happily ever after. Just like that. Just like that. Though knowing us, it'll probably involve more chaos than your average fairy tale. Elena laughed, thinking about how perfectly that summed up their relationship. I wouldn't have it any other way. As the elevator carried them up to their honeymoon suite, Elena reflected on the incredible journey that had brought them here. 6 weeks ago, she'd been a struggling graphic designer with commitment issues and a deep dread of her parents' matchmaking attempts. Tonight, she was Mrs. Alexander Kensington, married to a man who made her laugh, challenged her to be better, supported her dreams, and loved her exactly as she was. It had taken a car accident, a slap, a fake engagement, family pressure, and the biggest leap of faith either of them had ever taken. But sometimes the best love stories start with the most unlikely beginnings. And as Alexander carried her across the threshold of their honeymoon suite, because as he said, some traditions were worth keeping, even if they did everything else backwards, Elena knew that their story was just beginning. Epilogue. 1 year later, Elena stood in the kitchen of their new house in Coral Gables, watching Alexander attempt to make pancakes while their 8-month-old golden retriever, Storm, named for their relationship origin story, begged shamelessly for scraps. The morning sun streamed through the windows, illuminating the space they'd designed together, a perfect blend of Elena's bohemian style and Alexander's more classical taste. Alexander, she said patiently, trying not to laugh, you're supposed to flip them when they bubble, not when they're completely black on one side. I'm making them extra crispy, Alexander defended, scraping a particularly charred pancake off the griddle with more force than necessary. That's not crispy, that's carbon. We could probably use it as charcoal for the grill. Fine, you do it, Alexander said, stepping aside with a grin and kissing her cheek. I'll stick to what I'm good at. And what's that? Loving my wife, providing entertainment value, and making excellent coffee now that you've trained me properly. Elena laughed, taking over pancake duty, while Alexander wrapped his arms around her from behind. Through the kitchen window, she could see the garden they'd planted together, a chaotic mix of vegetables, herbs, and flowers that somehow worked perfectly together. Much like their relationship, the past year had been everything she'd hoped and nothing she'd expected. Marriage to Alexander had been a daily adventure in compromise, communication, and discovery. They'd had their share of adjustments, learning to compromise on everything from thermostat settings, Elena liked it warmer, to social calendars. Alexander's family had a lot of events to decorating styles. Elena's colorful art mixed surprisingly well with Alexander's family heirlooms. They'd survived their first major fight as a married couple when Alexander had surprised Elena by booking them a 2-week European honeymoon without consulting her. Assuming she'd be thrilled, Elena had been upset about not being included in the planning, and Alexander had been confused about why his gesture wasn't appreciated. They'd worked through it, ultimately taking a week-long road trip through the American Southwest instead, a compromise that had turned into one of their favorite memories. Any regrets? Alexander asked, echoing the question from their wedding day, his arms tightening around her waist. Only that we didn't think to elope and avoid the 3-ring circus our families turned our wedding into, Elena said, expertly flipping a perfectly golden pancake. That I didn't crash into your car sooner. Think of all the time we wasted not knowing each other. Elena turned in his arms, studying the face she'd woken up next to for the past year. Marriage had changed Alexander in subtle ways. He was more relaxed, more willing to take risks, more likely to laugh at himself. He'd started volunteering at a local elementary school, testing the waters for his dream of teaching. Elena had launched her own design studio, taking on clients who appreciated her creative vision rather than just needing cheap logos. "I have news," Elena said, suddenly nervous about his reaction. "Good news or bad news? Depends on how you feel about chaos multiplying exponentially." Alexander's eyes widened as understanding dawned. "Elena, are you saying I'm pregnant?" she said softly, watching his face carefully. 8 weeks. I found out yesterday, but I wanted to wait until this morning to tell you. Our anniversary seemed like the perfect time." Alexander's reaction was everything Elena could have hoped for and more. His whoop of joy was so loud that Storm started barking and running in excited circles around the kitchen. He swept Elena off her feet and spun her around, both of them laughing and crying at the same time. "Are you happy?" Elena asked when he finally put her down, her hands resting on his chest. "Happy? Elena, I'm over the moon. We're going to have a baby. Our baby. A baby who will probably inherit your inability to cook, and my stubborn streak," Elena pointed out, grinning through her tears, "and my grandmother's strong opinions, and your family's tendency to cry at commercials," Alexander added, his hands moving to rest gently on her still flat belly. "This kid doesn't stand a chance of being normal," Elena said. "Normal is overrated," Alexander said, pulling her close. "Besides, look how well abnormal worked out for us." As if on cue, the smoke alarm went off, filling the kitchen with the acrid smell of truly cremated pancakes. Storm barked louder. Alexander rushed to open windows while cursing his culinary skills, and Elena stood in the middle of the chaos, hand on her belly, laughing at the beautiful mess that was their life. "You know what this means, right?" Alexander said as he fanned the smoke detector with a kitchen towel. "That we need to invest in a better smoke detector, that we need to start planning the nursery and baby-proofing and figuring out how to explain to our child that Mommy and Daddy met when Daddy almost ran Mommy over with his car." Elena burst into laughter. "We're going to be those parents with the crazy love story, aren't we?" "The craziest," Alexander agreed, finally getting the smoke alarm to stop. "And I can't wait." He pulled her into his arms again, spinning her around the smoky kitchen, while Storm continued his excited barking. "I love you, Mrs. Kensington. I love our K's. I love our story, and I love the family we're building together. Even if our kid inherits my fear of butterflies and your tendency to burn breakfast, especially then," Alexander said, kissing her thoroughly. "Those are the parts that make us uniquely us." As they stood there in their smoky kitchen, holding each other and dreaming about their future, Elena realized that their love story was far from over. It was just beginning a new chapter, one that would probably involve sleepless nights, baby food stains, and strange places, and even more beautiful chaos than they'd already created together. It wasn't the life either of them had planned, but it was perfectly, wonderfully, chaotically theirs. And Elena Vargas Kensington couldn't imagine wanting anything else. The end.